Welcome to another edition of Business Leader Spotlight. In studio with me, I have an incredible business leader, Kevin Neal. Kevin is an Amazon best-selling award-winning author, speaker, and John Maxwell certified leadership coach. Kevin is creating thriving individuals and winning teams with his powerful speaking, training, and coaching engagements. With his dynamic, impactful delivery, Kevin inspires his audience to connect with their true purpose and utilize their unique strengths to grow as leaders and individuals. As a highly regarded thought leader, Kevin is well-loved for his authenticity and unique perspective towards leadership and self-growth. Kevin Neal, best-selling author, welcome to our show.
Thanks, TC. Glad to be here.
Kevin, I have to tell you right from the jump, my brother, that it is a miracle that I allowed you in my studio today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Well, normally I don't let anyone with more street credit than me come in this studio up in the house.
Well, I try.
You are representing today, my brother.
I'm trying to do my best.
I am thrilled to have you into the studio today. You have a powerful business, and your messaging is so needed in the world that we live in today. You bring such hope and inspiration to so many people. So again, welcome to our program today.
Thank you. It's a blessing to be here, and I'm glad that you invited me down.
Well, I got to tell you right from the jump, let's do this. Let's give a shout out to your family. I know we were talking before we started shooting. You have been married for over 40 years. So
Yes, sir.
Let's shout out your beautiful wife and your kids.
Shout out to my beautiful wife, Patricia, who's there in South Carolina waiting for me. I'll be home soon, baby. All my kids are grown. Candace, Sheandria, Chris, and Crystal. They're all in Atlanta. Good to have them as my children, and I'm proud of them as my children.
They are your legacy.
Yes.
They are your legacy, and they are a part of a greater legacy. I want to talk about your book, but while we're on this topic of legacy, what a legacy that your father and your great-grandmother have planted and instilled in your life. It's a powerful legacy. Can you tell me how your dad influenced your life, and then we'll go to your great-grandmother, because I really want to talk about those two things at the start.
Okay. My dad was the most influential man in my life, bar none. He has such a presence about him, and saying that to say that my father had a handicap, or he wouldn't call it a handicap, and no one who knew him would call it a handicap. But when my father was in his early 20s, he came to realize that he had a spinal disease, a degenerative spinal disease that he didn't realize. He had to go into the hospital and have surgery. He went in and had surgery and came out a quadriplegic. Now, to some, that many would say that that's the end. It's over.
Devastating.
Yeah. I mean, who would think that once you go into the hospital one way, you would come out worse? But he came out quadriplegic. So my father heard the prognosis, which the doctors didn't give him any hopes of regaining the activity of his limbs. But my father had a great imagination. He had a powerful imagination. And the only thing that he could see was himself walking again, see himself taking care of his children. And he realized that I can't take care of my children in this bed. I can't take care of my children if I can't get up. So it took 3 years, but after 3 years, he began to walk on a walker. And After that, he began to walk on a cane.
Wow.
And for the rest of his life, that's how I saw him walking on a cane. But I have so many stories that I could tell you that my father did things that a person with all of their activities, a full strength in their legs and arms, wouldn't even try to do. But my father would do them because he had the imagination to do it. My father, I tell the story about my father when he like I said, was walking on a cane. But my mother had to go to a conference. And he said, well, how long are you going to be gone on this conference? And she said, I'll be gone a week. She said, when are you coming back? And she tells him. Now, he started planning in his mind, and he told us he would lay in the bed at night thinking of how he could do this project. And this project was creating a carport overhang over over our house.
Right.
Because he didn't want my mother to have to walk in the weather into the house. So he's trying to figure out how can he do this by himself, because at this time, all the children were grown. We were away from home, so we couldn't help him. So he's trying to figure out how he's going to do this. And so my mother leaves, goes to her conference. When she gets back, he's already built a overhang to keep my mother from having to be in the elements.
Wow.
Now, he did this all by himself. He had to put up poles, to create the roof. He did it all by himself.
He lived his life by example.
Yes. Yes.
You can talk about the power of imagination
Mm-hmm.
all day long, but you saw that in action
Absolutely.
with your own dad.
Yes. Yes.
What an amazing story. And, how our reality is shaped by our vision.
Mm-hmm.
What's the first thing that we say sometimes when we're faced with something, a big dream, a big-sized dream, a God-sized dream? We say, well, I could never see myself
Right. And that's the
doing
problem.
that. And that's what I picked up on what your dad said
Mm-hmm.
when he got this incredible, devastating diagnosis. He can never see himself
That's it.
in that way.
Mm-hmm.
There's power in that, isn't
Yes.
there?
Yes. Well, the Bible says that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not what?
Seen.
Imagination is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. What you realize in your imagination is something that has not been created before, but you have a vision of what can be. And what imagination does, it goes out and gets that vision and says,
Right.
puts it in front of you. And as long as you can see it, as long as you have the vision for it, you can do it. You can be it.
Right. Well, I got to tell you, that upbringing, that example from your dad had to lead to your best-selling book, Supercharging or Embracing Your Superpower, Reactivating the Power of Imagination. I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but I want to continue on with this track of your family, this incredible family that you have, your great-grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
What an incredible story with her. Can we honor her and show her some love in this interview?
Now, my great-grandmother was born in the late 1800s. Now, imagine, this is right after slavery. She was born. But she was born with no arms. Now, somebody would look at that and say, born with no arms back in the late 1800s? And you would think that they would just put her in a home somewhere, or she would end up being a ward of the state. But not this woman. This woman had an imagination. And as she got older, she ended up becoming a seamstress, sewing clothes, putting together clothes with her toes. With her toes. Now imagine that.
Wow.
And not only that, she became a musician, a piano player. She played piano with her toes. And she went all over Southeast playing with her toes.
Wow. That's amazing. We're dropping a picture of your great-grandmother during this interview.
Mm-hmm.
What an amazing woman.
Yes.
Kevin, I have often said that there is no such thing as a self-made millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
There is not.
Right.
All wealth comes from the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to tell you, I stand on the shoulders of so many that plowed the ground before me.
Yes.
And you stand on some pretty impressive shoulders.
Yes. Yes.
How has their example and their testimony of their life, how has that influenced your life as a man?
Well, let me tell you a little story about me.
Right.
In 2017, I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. But now, and multiple myeloma is a blood cancer. They told me that it was in a smoldering stage. And if it didn't progress for the next 2 years, I wouldn't have to worry about having any types of chemo or anything like that, no kind of treatments. I said, "Cool, okay, cool, fine." So 2008, that was 2017. 2018, I lost my job. After 20 years of being at this particular job, they had a downsizing, and I no longer had a job. So now I'm looking for employment. Couldn't find anything. I was living in Atlanta at the time. Couldn't find anything in the Atlanta area. Looked elsewhere, and the only place that I found a position that would serve my purpose was in South Carolina. Never been to South Carolina. Well, never lived in South Carolina other
Right.
than when I had my basic training.
Right.
No
Fort Jackson.
Yeah,
Fort Jackson,
yeah.
right, yes.
No family, no friends in Greenville. And I said, okay, well, I guess this is where the Lord wants me to go. So loaded up my family, and me and my wife and my oldest daughter, we moved to Greenville. 1 month after I moved to Greenville, my father passed away.
Mm.
Now, I told you just how much he meant to me and how
Right.
influential. He passes away. I'm at this point kind of going into a downward spiral because I'm upset with God. I'm upset with the world. I have to move to this place where I have no kind of connections, and I'm angry with God. And I'll just be honest, I was angry with God. I didn't want to hear about God, didn't want to hear about anything about ministry or anything.
Right.
I was just tired. And I said, Lord, I've been living for you all of this time in my life. Because I accepted the Lord when I was a teenager, 13 years old. And now all of these things are happening to me. Well, the end of 2019, my father passes away beginning of 2019. 9 months later, the doctor calls me. He says, your numbers have gone up. You're going to have to start having treatments. I said, okay, wow. After all of this, God, now I'm going to have to start having chemo, stem cell transplant, all of this. And I went into a depression, to be honest. I went into a depression. But after I got over it, I realized, okay, my dad, my great-grandmother, they had imagination to see something for the future. My dad couldn't see himself doing anything but walking and taking care of his children. I said, I've got to have that same type of imagination. So my imagination is not being controlled by a disease, not allowing my life to be halted by a disease, but to allow my life to be full and to replenish and to share what God has given to me with everybody that I can.
Your birthright.
Yes, yes.
And then what happened?
I started my business. I started my business. Yes. So I received my coaching credentials in 2016, which was before any of this happened. But this was the time that I saw it was the time for me to.
Kevin, when you started sharing this story, there was an anointing that came into this set. And I feel that we've got somebody that's watching the program. You're tuned in and you're flipping the dial and you come across this Rastafarian on here and you go, what is this? What is this about? And now it's resonated with you. Maybe you have gotten a terrible diagnosis in your life. Maybe it is cancer. Maybe it is something life-threatening. Kevin, I want to take a moment and just respect this. I want you to look into this camera for that person tuning in right now, and they've got tears in their eyes because they're facing that same battle. They're mad too. They're mad at God because life has not been fair for any number of reasons. We've come through a global pandemic, and people are still suffering financially traumas from that event. And sir, if you could take a moment right now and just speak into that camera to the people at home, a message of hope and inspiration, if you don't mind.
When I think about my diagnosis and what I have gone through, I think about how often our past controls us. We think about what has happened in our past, the things that we have gone through in our past, and many times we'll hear someone say, well, I heard such and such got that disease and they passed away. I heard this person got that, or this happened to that person. And while the things that happened to them, I don't even want to talk about. Well, that's the past. Jim Rohn once said that the past should be our teacher. In other words, the past should teach us. We should learn from the past, yes, but we should not let the past control us. A lot of people have the prison of their past. You don't have to live in the prison of what has happened in the past, of what people have told you, of what people think will happen. But you can have an imagination that says, I don't care what has happened in the past. I don't care what someone else has gone through. The vision that I have for myself, I see myself being fruitful. I see myself going forth and doing great things. I see myself not being controlled by my circumstances, but being controlled not by nothing but what God can do for me and the power of my imagination. And there is no control on the power of imagination, the most powerful force in the world.
What a powerful word of encouragement, Kevin. You mentioned about you started your coaching business
Yes.
back in 2016. Is that what you said?
Well, that's when I was certified. I actually started it after I went through my chemos and my stem cell transplant and all that. I started it after my cancer treatments. So
Wonderful. Well, I want to dive in. I want to talk about your coaching business, but first I want to because I can't help but want to talk about your best-selling book, Embracing Your Superpower, Reactivating the Power of Imagination. First of all, congratulations that it debuted on the Amazon bestseller list. That's a huge accomplishment. What inspired you? And I think I already know this answer, but what inspired you to write this book? And by the way, one of the things I love about your writings is that this is a book that is concise, to the point, and that you can pick up and you can read. It's not one of these 200-page books that are a boat anchor down here in Florida.
Right.
This is very concise and very powerful. So what makes a good book is not just information, but revelation. If you can get the revelation, then you can have transformation in your life. So, Kevin, tell me, my man, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, first of all, my dad.
Yes.
And his story. And I hate that I didn't write it before he passed away.
Right.
But his passing away inspired me to go ahead and do it and put it down on paper and let people know what a great man this was. And also, now I didn't put my great grandmother's story in there. I'm thinking about doing a rewrite and putting her in there as well.
Which you should.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
But yeah, since my father had just passed away, I wanted to do something to honor him. And that was the birth of Embracing Your Superpower.
Wow. Who should read the book? In your estimation, who's your ideal reader?
Anyone who has a dream, anyone who has come across situations in your life that seem insurmountable, anyone who feels like I've come to a point in my life and there's no way for me to get past this. The power of the imagination is so inclusive that no matter who you are, where you're going through, what you've dealt with, if you can just get a vision of where you want to go, of what you want to achieve, then the imagination will catch hold to that vision and you could become whatever. And I know we hear that often. But the problem is most people don't have the vision. They say something, but they don't visualize it. Imagination is getting the vision of what it is you want.
Wow. Wow. You are actually an in-demand speaker as well. You're actually down here. The only reason we were able to get you into the studio is that you're actually speaking in Tampa tomorrow, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
But you're an in-demand speaker. Tell me about that aspect of your business.
Well, I speak on different subjects. I like to talk about imagination, one, but I also like to talk about communication and leadership, because those are some things that cause problems in businesses and organizations. If you can't communicate, you're going to always have struggles. You know, if you don't have good leadership, then you're going to always have problems. So I like to talk on those issues. One of the main things that I like to talk to people about is self-identity.
Right.
Because I tell people that everyone has a story. We're all just walking, talking, living, breathing books. Each day is a new chapter in that book. And if we don't own our own story, if we don't know our own story, then we end up being an extra in somebody else's.
Right. Are you coaching people one-on-one? Do you have a coaching program?
Yes. I do individual and group coaching. We do it in person, or we could do it virtual. A lot of things have gone to virtual, especially since the pandemic. But we do it virtual and in person.
Right. Who's your ideal coaching client? Who watching this program would be an ideal client for you in coaching, to take you up on that?
An ideal person, it would be a business leader or a business professional who feels that they're in a rut and they don't know how to get out. One of the things, and the name of my business is Building Bridges to Better. Most of us have a better that we don't know how to get to. Now, you can't find anyone that you ask, is there a better place for you? You won't find anyone who will say, no, there's no better. I'm where I am, and that's where I'll always be. All of us have a better place, and there's usually a chasm between where we are and that better place. And many people don't know how to get across that chasm. And what we do is help them to build that bridge to help them get from where they are to where they want to be.
What do you think is the biggest challenge for people today in activating their God-given dreams? What do you find is the biggest obstacle? Because the landscape has changed in our lifetime, just in the
Yes.
last few years. So is it the economy? Is it relationships? In your expert opinion, what is the biggest challenge that people face today in activating their God-given dreams?
What social media has done is create an unrealistic idea of who we are. And our story, as told by social media, is all glamour. It's all good. But our true story is not all good. We have bad, we have ugly, we have ups and downs, highs and lows. And until we embrace our whole story and put that story into our businesses, into our leadership, into our communication, then we'll never be everything that we can be, because we're constantly trying to hide those bad parts and trying to show those good parts. So what we need to do is embrace our whole story. And once we embrace our whole story, we can share that part of our story with our business, our colleagues, everyone that we come in contact with. And people will respect you when they know, you're not trying to pull something over on them.
You're talking about authenticity.
Yes.
In how you present yourself.
Yes.
And social media, I think, is critical. That authenticity. People want to do business with people that are real.
Yes.
Real, not this image, that is portrayed on social media.
Right.
Take me into, we've talked about some very, very personal situations in your life, but take me into that moment where you were at a crossroads of your destiny. Because so many today watching the program, they are at a crossroads of their destiny. But Kevin, take me into that moment that you can point to and say, that's where everything changed. I could have gone this way or could have gone that way, but this was my crossroads, and take us into that experience if you don't mind.
Okay, well, that would go back to the time when I was told that I'm going to have to start having treatments for my cancer.
It hit you like a ton of bricks.
Yes, yes. And I felt I was ready to give up, honestly. As I said before,
As much life, as much energy and gifting that you have, you were ready to give up.
yes, yes. And I can understand where people get to a place where they want to give up.
Because you're a man surrounded by love.
Yes, yes.
You have a loving wife, you have loving kids, you have this great legacy, and yet you were still ready to throw in the towel.
Yes, yes. And it wasn't until I came to myself and I realized that all that God had done for me was to bring me to this point. What do I do at this point? You've been talking about walking by faith. You've been talking about trusting God all your life. Now what are you going to do? When you're really facing some tough obstacles, are you going to just throw in the towel?
Right.
And I had to say no. Everything that I've lived for, that I believed in, that I've trusted God for throughout the years, I can't stop now.
No.
And I'm just taking from the book my inspiration. My dad, my great-grandmother, they saw something that no one else could see. They saw something that the doctors couldn't see. They had a vision of where they were going, and that is where I am.
You know, when God calls you to do something, when God calls you to do anything, you're going to see what others cannot see.
That's it. Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's critical. It's critical that you get this type of a book in your hands, embracing your superpower. That is a superpower.
It is.
Our imagination is a superpower. Kevin, we're just about out of time in our show. How can people get in touch with you that want to connect with you?
The best way to get in touch with me would be to contact me through my website, kdnealbuildsbridges.com.
We're going to drop a link down below for this powerful, powerful man of God and this incredible business leader, incredible speaker. Kevin, I have to tell you, I am honored that you came by to see me. This will not be the last time. I won't let you leave the studio, young man, unless you agree to come back and see me. Will you come back and see me?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, when you come back and see me, I'm going to be ready for you next time. I'm going to have my own swag. I'm going to have a little some here
All right,
on set. I'm going to be. I didn't see you coming this time, but I'll be ready for you the next time. Connect with this powerful, powerful leader, this man that is walking in the mandate that God has placed on his life. Make sure you connect with him at the website down below. And we'll see you next time on our show.